Hey guys, welcome back to another impressions video, and today we're here to talk about Kirby Battle Royale for the Nintendo 3DS, the latest game that I beat on my never-ending backlog of Nintendo 3DS titles. Especially now that I'm pretty busy with other things in life, but this was a really easy to get one or to knock out or put a check on my list just because it's a very short game. It took me, I want to say, between 5 and 7 hours. I should have checked my activity log before I actually started this video, but it's a fairly short game. It does have a single player mode, but I think the focus of the game is to have more of a multiplayer type of approach. However, I have to say that the single player mode was fairly, I guess, fairly fun for me. I mean, I know this game had a lot of medium reviews, not overly positive and neither overly negative. And this game just goes to show that it's one of those games that it's a little bit weird because it feels like it's a collection of mini games. So it's not a proper Kirby game, even though it has a story mode. And this game here is a testament to the support that Nintendo gave to the Kirby series, especially on the Nintendo 3DS, because we have Kirby Triple Deluxe, Planet Robobot, then we have Battle Royale, and we have, I want to say, then we have the port of Kirby's Epic Yarn from the Wii to the 3DS, and we have a bunch of downloadable titles that made their way to the eShop. I think there's like 3 or 4 exclusive Kirby games on the Nintendo eShop, so definitely Nintendo went all out with the Kirby series. And of course then you have the Virtual Console downloads from the Game Boy Color, Game Boy games, Kirby games on the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Shop, or whatever it's called, Virtual Console or whatever. So Kirby is definitely well represented on the Nintendo 3DS, and this title right here is a little bit of the swan song of the Kirby 3DS presence. This game came out in early 2018, and again, like I was saying, it's not a proper mainline title, but I did have a lot of fun. It's basically it's called, consider a brawler / fighting game, which I guess is a proper way to describing the game. To me, it's more of a just mini game collection featuring Kirby and other characters. And the single player story, it's a very simple. It just basically boils down to King Dedede offering or creating a tournament and offering the winner cake as a prize. So Kirby is excited. He enters a tournament along with Waddle Dee, and he is your partner in the single player mode. So whenever there's a team-based mini game, he partners with you in order to take on other teams. And then your opponents are other Kirbys. Like, the premise of the story is that King Dedede was able to create this machine that clones Kirby, which is it's pretty funny. But yeah, there's a little bit of a repetition, if you will, in terms of your opponents, because they're basically Kirbys with a different color. But of course they have different abilities, and as you play the single player mode and unlock or attain more points, because each mini game at the end of each round you get points. If you finish first, you get a lot of points. If you finish second, a little bit less, third, and so forth. Pretty straightforward system. So the more points you get, the more new abilities you unlock. So you start with the typical sword fighting Kirby, the one that looks like a Link basically with the little green hat. And then of course you start unlocking other types of Kirby abilities, such as using the ninja stars, and using the beetle that charges, which, by the way, that was my favorite ability. I used that a lot in this game in order to succeed in a lot of the mini games. So, and then later on in the game, you get to unlock other staple characters of the series, such as Meta Knight, and I believe when you beat the game, you can also unlock King Dedede. And then there's also an online component that really puts you out there to play with other people. I didn't really test it out, but there's also local co-op by doing the share feature in the 3DS. But talking a little bit about the gameplay, the game, it's basically your typical Kirby. You can jump multiple times, you can use your attacks depending on the ability you have at the moment, and based on that there are mini games created around that. For example, one of them is collecting apples, It's as easy as attacking a tree, getting the apples, and then you have to run with the apples. You can grab as many as you want, throw them in a basket, and then you can basically, you know, count points for each apple that you put in the basket and open the gates. But the hectic part is that you can attack opponents that are carrying the apples, and you can kind of like steal the apples from them, or you can go to their tree and get their apples instead of your apples. And it gets pretty hectic, and surprisingly, the AI is a good companion. I thought in this time in this time of the life cycle of video games, that AI it's losing its focus. You know, when multiplayer games are around, because the focus is playing either with other persons, local co-op, or multiplayer online. But the Nintendo did a pretty good job of providing the AI. You know, enough, I guess, you know, capabilities to helping you out, and they're pretty smart. So depending on the mini game, you're bound to have a good time, even you don't have a human partner helping you out. The game stays true to the Kirby formula. It's pretty simple, pretty easy for the most part, with the exception of the last I think it's called a gold cup or whatever. You start with in the bronze category, then you move up to silver, then to gold, and I think there's a last type of circuit, if you will, that you get before you face King DDD in the final bout. So in that final one, the challenge rose up a little bit. There are some ridiculous requests, because it's not longer winning the mini game, but they give you conditions. You have to not only win the mini game, but you also have to, for example, come back from a losing perspective, or you have to collect more than X amount of apples in the apple mini game, for example. So there are a little bit of a challenging goals in order to actually beat those games, and that's when the game becomes a little bit challenging, and it kind of like veers out of that really easy, really simple nature of the Kirby games. The graphics are, you know, your typical Nintendo 3DS titles. The models are the same that were used in other Kirby games. Surprisingly, this game does not, from what I recall, it doesn't have 3D. I mean, I was turning it on the title screen during the gameplay, and it feels like this is one of those Nintendo late life cycles 3DS titles where Nintendo was like, we're not even going to bother adding the 3D effect, which is a shame, because this is a Nintendo 3DS, and it should have had the 3D effects, in my opinion. I understand this is a budget title, but I don't think when the game released it had a budget price. So a little bit of a negative in that regard. And of course, you know, another negative is it's not your typical storyline driven Kirby game, or your typical platforming Kirby game, but that's okay. I guess that's another positive. It's a little bit of a different Kirby game. We already have Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot to scratch that itch, and this is a little bit of a different game. Although, you know, it wasn't very popular, I don't think a whole lot of people enjoyed it as much as I think I did. But it's worth checking out, because it's one of those late cycle Nintendo 3DS games that I think you can get for fairly cheap. In fact, I think GameStop was clearing these games out, and I got my copy not too long ago for like $10. So highly recommend it if you guys want to play this game. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you all later.